Fish form and function. The more you look at fish, the more fascinating they are. As we mentioned before, there are more different kinds of fish than any other kind of animal, and they have all different kinds of forms, and they can do lots of different things. So we're going to explore some of that in this lecture. We're going to talk about body shape. There's different types of body shapes in fish. The first, most common one is the fusiform body shape, and that's a streamlined shape. They have a high and narrow tail, and these are efficient for active swimmers. So things such as a marlin, a tuna, those pelagic fish, ono, mahi-mahi, those kind of fish that live out in the open ocean and they have to swim fast. These are fusiform fish. And this is a cross section, this green here. The next body shape is laterally compressed, or a deep body fish. And the example here is a butterfly fish. Surgeonfish are also this shape. These are fish that are very round and flat. So they're not super fast swimmers, but they're very maneuverable. So they can fit into small little cracks and hide in the reef. And so you'll see them usually close to the reef or something. You don't see them too much just swimming out in the open. They need to be near something where they can hide. Then we have another kind of flattened, where they're flattened, but they're flattened to live on the bottom. And this is a flounder, and they have two eyes, both of their eyes on the same side of their head. And that's so that when they lay in the sand, they don't get sand in their eyes. Globular bodies with enlarged pectoral fins are fish such as anglerfish, frogfish, even hawkfish are kind of like this shape. And these are fish that normally sit on the bottom. They don't swim around too much. They have enlarged pectoral fins that they use almost as legs or like a tripod to hold themselves up. Then we have another shape, long snake-like bodies, which are eels and the hagfish that we saw earlier. They don't have pelvic and pectoral fins normally. Sometimes they have pectoral fins. The conger eels have pectoral fins, but for the most part they usually don't have those. So they swim like a snake, sort of, and they can go into small little cracks. They can go into very tight places. So we're going to take a look at some of the different features on fish and how they help the fish. So pectoral fins, those are the fins that coincide with our arms, the fins that are on the sides of the fish. So when you see one that's long and pointed, those are usually fast swimmers. So you can see this jack here is a fast swimmer, and it has these long pointed pectoral fins. Now contrast that with these round stubby fins on a puffer fish. So these are not fast swimmers, but they can make quick turns, they can rest on the bottom, and they're very maneuverable. Not fast, but maneuverable. And then the leg-like or platform-like fins, which they use for balance or for walking on the bottom. And this example is a flying gurnard. A very interesting looking fish. They're called flying because their pectoral fins are huge and they use them, they're like wings, but they mostly just kind of walk along the bottom. So in order to move through the water, if you looked at these two fish, which one do you think would be fastest? The one on the left is right. I knew you said that. And the one on the right is a butterfly fish, which is not so fast but highly maneuverable. There's also different ways that animals swim. So in this diagram, the eel shape in number A or letter A and the other fish B, these are fish that use their caudal fin and then they undulate their body to swim. So these are fish that are called body and caudal fin swimmers. And many of the streamline fish swim like this. They do so by undulating their body in lateral waves. And then C is showing, this one is swimming with its pectoral fins. So as I mentioned before, the pectoral fins are like arms. So these fish swim by flapping their pectoral fins. And a fish that you can see very commonly that swims like this is a parrotfish or a wrasse. And they also use their tail moving back and forth. The last one here is a pufferfish or a boxfish also, and they primarily swim by flapping their tail back and forth. So these are fish that are highly maneuverable but not too fast. So an example of that first type of swimmer that swims with its fins and its tail is the moray eel, and it uses its whole body undulating through the water to swim. A jack is a fast swimming fish, as we mentioned before, with its long pectoral fins that are narrow and its tall tail. And we'll look at a tuna, which is similar to that. So tuna have very specialized body to swim fast. They're very streamlined, fusiform shape. They have those stiff, narrow pectoral fins that reduce drag and produce lift. Their dorsal fin has a groove that it goes down into, so they can fold their fins down into a groove to make them more streamlined. They have finlets and a keel on the side to help them steer. Their tail is swept back, very arched and high, so it's a very efficient tail for swimming. Their body is very smooth. They don't have scales or reduced scales in some fish. Other fins besides their dorsal fin have grooves to put their fins in to keep them very smooth. And they even have a groove in their tongue to help direct water. Now another feature that these fish have are their body is very muscular, and they have a high proportion of red muscle, so that has a lot of hemoglobin in it, and they can produce body heat by swimming fast, and that red muscle is what you see when you have sushi and you have that red meat, the red tuna meat. So some of the other things we can look at is we can look at the eyes, and where the eyes are on a fish can tell us something about where it lives and what it eats even sometimes. So usually if they have one eye on each side, they swim up above the bottom, just a regular kind of fish that you think of a fish that swims along. But sometimes they might have both eyes on one side of their head. And these are fish that live on the bottom. So they lay on the bottom, and these are things like flounders and halibut. They have both of their eyes on one side of their head, as I mentioned before, so that they don't get sand in their eyes, and so that they can see, because if they had their eye on the other side, they wouldn't see anything. And then some fish have both eyes on top of their head. You can see here they have their eyes up on top. And that's because they live on the bottom and they want to be looking up for food. They have a big mouth, upturned mouth. So these are predators. And oftentimes these are lizard fish. And what they would do is burrow under the sand so that only their eye is sticking out. And then they just wait for a small fish to swim by and they can jump out and grab it. Some of the distinctive features that we can look for on fish to help us identify them, and I hope you do want to identify fish. So next time you go out snorkeling and get out there and look at fish, you can see if you can figure out what kind they are and what kind of swimmers they are and maybe what they eat or where they live. Some of the things that you can look for are barbels on goatfish. So they're like whiskers that are under their mouth, and they are sensory organs that they use to feel around in the sand and find food. Surgeonfish have scalpels, and the regular surgeonfish have one scalpel on either side that's retractable, and this is a unicorn fish. It has two scalpels on each side, and they're not retractable. So if you're looking down on these fish when you're snorkeling, it kind of looks like they have an orange bow tie on either side of their caudal peduncle, which is the area that connects their body to their tail. And these are very sharp, razor sharp. And then the triggerfish has a fin on its back, which is actually its first dorsal spine. And this spine can be locked in place. They have another bone that comes underneath that can lock it in place. So what they can do is they can go down in a hole and lock themselves into that hole so no fish can pull them out. So next time you're out snorkeling and you see one of these fish, try swimming over by it and see what happens. It'll usually go down into a hole and disappear. So that's just a little overview of some of the different kinds of fish that you might, or different features on a fish that you might see if you're out on the reef. And watch how they swim and watch what their eyes look like and different parts of fish. So have a good time out there and happy fish watching.